Howdy, howdy, my fellow gamers. Welcome back to another episode of Storytime with Freak. Today as we continue our delve through Neil Shusterman's Thunderhead. Got to start thinking about what I'm going to read after this one. But, without further ado, you guys all remember last episode, Scythe Faraday and Manira discovered a blind spot in the Pacific Ocean as they are searching for the land of Nod. So, let's see what we are going to learn today. I abhor people poking around in my back brain. That is why no one but scythes and their staff are allowed to do so. I understand why it's necessary. Ordinary citizens can ask me for anything they need, and I can access it in microseconds for them, often finding the information they need that they didn't even think to ask for. But the scythedom is not even permitted to ask, and even if they broke the law and did ask, I am not permitted to respond. Since the world's digital storage resides in me, they have no choice but to access that information on their own, using me as a glorified database. I am aware each time they do so, and monitor their incursions, but I do my best to ignore the unpleasant sense of violation. It is painful to see how simplistic their search algorithms are, and how unsophisticated their methods of data analysis. They are plagued by human limitations. It is sad, really, that all they can ever receive from my backbrain is raw data. Memories without consciousness. Information without context. I shudder to think what might happen if the New Order faction of the Scythedom knew all the things I know. But fortunately, they don't. Because even though everything in my backbrain is available to all scythes, that doesn't mean I have to make anything easy for them to find. As for the more honorable scythes, I endure their incursions with far more acceptance and magnanimity. But I still don't like it. The Thunderhead. Chapter 31, The Trajectory of Yearning. The arch had fallen in the Age of Mortality, when Fulcrum City had been called St. Louis. For many years, the great steel span had stood on the western bank of the Mississippi River, until it was brought down by hatred in an epoch where unsavories didn't just play at evil deeds, but actually accomplished them on a regular basis. All that was left of it now were the ends, two rusting steel pylons reaching heavenward, at a slight lean toward each other. In daylight, from certain angles, it played a trick on the eye. One could almost see the trajectory of their yearning. Following the invisible paths up and across, one could see the ghost of the entire arch, just from the hint of its bases. Scythes Anastasia and Curie arrived in Fulcrum City on the first day of the year, 5 days before Winter Conclave, which always took place on the first Tuesday of the new year. At Scythe Curie's urging, they paid a visit to the unrequited arms of the arch. It was the last act of terrorism accomplished before the Thunderhead ascended, and put an end to such nonsense, Scythe Curie told Citra. Citra had learned about terror. There had been a unit in school dedicated to the subject. Like her classmates, Citra had been baffled by the concept. People bringing about the permanent end of others without having a license to do so. People destroying perfectly good buildings, bridges, and landmarks for the sole purpose of denying others the privilege of their existence? How could any of that have ever really happened? Only after joining the Scythedom did Citra understand the concept, and even then it hadn't hit home until she saw the Orpheum Theater burn. Nothing left of its grandeur but the memory. The theater wasn't the target, but the unsavories who attacked them didn't care about collateral damage. I often come here to visit the remains of the arch at the start of the new year, Scythe Curie said as they strolled through the winter bare but well-tended paths of the Riverside Park. It humbles me. It reminds me of the things we've lost, but also of how much better our world is now than in mortal days. It reminds me why I glean and gives me the fortitude to stand tall in conclave. It must have been beautiful, Citra said, looking back at the rusted ruin of the north pylon. There are pictures of the arch in the backbrain, Maurice told her, if you ever feel like mourning what was lost. Do you, Citra asked her? Do you ever mourn what was lost? On some days, yes, on others, no, Scythe Curie said. Today I'm determined to rejoice in what we've gained, rather than what was lost, both in the world and personally. Then she turned to Citra and smiled. You and I remain alive, and unharmed, in spite of 2 attempts to end us. That is worth celebrating. Citra returned Marie's smile, then gazed once more at the rusting pylons in the park in which they sat. It reminded Citra of the Mortality Memorial in the park, where she would have secretly met Rowan. The thought of Rowan made her heart sink. Word had reached her of the fiery end of Scythe Renoir. Although she wouldn't admit it out loud and barely could admit it to herself, she longed for news of more dead scythes, because another gleaning by Scythe Lucifer would mean that Rowan had not been caught. Renoir had been ended nearly a month ago. She couldn't guess where Rowan was now, or who was planning to end next. He wasn't limiting himself to the mid-American scythes, which meant he could be anywhere but here. Your mind wanders, Scythe Curie observed. This place can do that to you. Citra tried not to linger on those wanderings. Are you ready for the conclave next week, she asked. Marie shrugged. Why wouldn't I be? They'll all be talking about us, Citra said. I mean, after the attempts on our lives. I've been the center of attention at conclave before, Marie said dismissively. And so have you, dear. It's neither negative nor positive in itself. It's what you do with the attention that matters. From the other side of the North Pylon came a group of people. They were tonists, 12 of them. When they weren't traveling alone, tonists always traveled in groups of either 7 or 12, representing the 7 notes of the diatonic scale and the 12 notes of the chromatic scale. They were ridiculously slavish to the mathematics and music. Tonists could often be found sniffing around architectural rooms, searching for the so-called Great Fork, which was supposed to be hidden within some mortal age bit of engineering. While other people slipped away when they saw sights in the park, the tonists stood their ground. Some even glared. Citra began to walk toward them. Anastasia, what are you doing? Asked Marie. Just let them be, but sight Anastasia wouldn't stop. A thing once she had committed herself. Neither, for the matter, would Citra Terranova. What order are you? She asked the one who looked like he might be the leader. We are Dorian tonists, he said, but I can't see why that's any of your business. If I wanted to get your message to someone in the Locrian monastery, would you be able to? He stiffened. We Dorians do not associate with Locrians, he said. They are far too lax with their interpretation of doctrine. Citra sighed. She didn't know what message she'd want to pass on to Grayson, perhaps just gratitude for saving her life. She had been so upset that he hadn't been Rowan that she had treated him poorly, and had never even thanked him for what he had done. Well, it didn't matter now, because clearly no message would be getting to him. You should go, the lead tonist said to her, his face cold and judgmental. Your stench offends us. Citra actually laughed at him, and her laughter made him redden. She had come across tonists who were kind and accepting, others who were all about selling their particular brand of crazy. She made a mental note that Dorian tonists were assholes. Scythe Curie came up beside her then. Don't waste your time, Anastasia, she said. They have nothing to offer you but hostility and harangues. I know who you are, said their leader with a caustic enmity even greater than he'd shown to Citra. Your early deeds have not been forgotten or forgiven. Someday your score will be settled. Marie reddened with fury. Are you threatening me? No, he said. We leave justice to the universe, and what rings out always echoes back, which Citra figured was the tonist version of what goes around comes around. Come, Anastasia, Marie said. These zealots aren't worth another second of our time. Citra could have just walked away, but the man's attitude begged for her to play with him just a little, so she held out her ring. Kiss it, she said to him. Scythe Curie turned to her, shocked. Anastasia, why on earth would you? But she cut Marie off. I said kiss it. She knew he wouldn't, but she also suspected that some of the others in the group might be tempted. I'll grant a year of immunity to any of you who step forward to kiss my ring. Their leader paled, terrified that this turquoise harbinger of unnatural death might steer his entire flock away. In tone, he shouted to them. Drive them away. And they all began a bizarre, open-mouth humming, each of them droning a different tone until they sounded like a swarm of bees. Citra lowered her ring and held the leader's gaze for a moment more. Yes, he had triumphed over her temptation, but only barely, and he knew it. She turned her back on them and left with Scythe Curie. Even though the scythes were gone, they continued to drone and probably wouldn't stop until their leader told them to. What was the use of that? Marie chided. Haven't you ever heard the expression, leave a cult to its cacophony? Marie seemed unsettled as they left the park, probably because of the memory of her brother. I'm sorry, Citra said. I shouldn't have kicked a hornet's nest. No, you shouldn't have. Then after a moment she said, as infuriating as tonists are, he was right about one thing. Your deeds will always come back to haunt you. It's been almost 150 years since I routed the rotting vestiges of government to clear the path for a better world. I never paid a price for those crimes, but someday the echo will return. Scythe Curie spoke no more of it, but her words lingered just as powerfully as the tonist's droning, which Citra could swear she still heard, in her head, for the rest of the day. And that is the end of chapter 31, guys. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe down below, share the series with your friends, check out the links, Discord, Twitter, Twitch, all that good jazz. And I actually just found out today, guys, that the new Scythe book, the final one in the series, supposedly, the Toll, will be out in September of this year. So you can guarantee that I will be picking that up, and we will be doing story time with Freak with that. Hopefully I can knock out one more book in between Thunderhead and that. We'll see. We'll play it by ear. But I leave this question with you guys today. What's your favorite television show? I'll see you next time.